Hey guys, today's topic is about leptin. I get a lot of questions about leptin, how it's involved in weight loss and weight gain. Is there a supplement that you can take to help change or modulate your leptin levels? So I wanted to kind of clarify a few things for you today about how it actually works within the body. So today's video, we're going to look at what actually is leptin, how is it regulated, what happens if I have high serum leptin levels or perhaps you have very low serum leptin levels, and how you can actually normalize these. And this falls in line with the recent research publication or a study that I've been involved in where I actually also had my own leptin levels tested at the end of my diet when I was about to get on stage. We then took my leptin levels at 4 weeks post diet and then at 8 weeks post. So it all ties in quite nicely, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding about how this hormone works. So what is leptin? Leptin is a lovely hormone. It's known as the satiety hormone. It works in quite nicely with another hormone called ghrelin. So it's a nice little helix. It's basically made up of a combination of amino acids, actually 167 to be exact, and it's a protein. When people ask about leptin being in supplement form, I don't believe that there are any supplements that are available on the market that are leptin, because it wouldn't be digested anyway. Because it's a protein, it would go through the normal processes of digestion and would not end up as leptin. Leptin is largely secreted from our adipose cells or our fat cells. It is also secreted in a number of other tissues, so bone marrow, it's secreted from our skeletal muscle, but for the purposes of today, we're just going to assume that most of it is produced in our fat cells. I'm going to draw a nice little graph for you guys so that you can kind of see how leptin responds as our body fat levels shift. So please excuse my lovely drawing. So if we use the black marker as an indicator of leptin, let's say it's here at a normal level. And then over time, as we diet and our body fat levels come down, this would be leptin. Then if we use blue marker, the hormone that opposes leptin and is also known as the hunger hormone is ghrelin. So let's say ghrelin was at a normal level, and then it will start to increase like this as our body fat levels come down. So where does body fat sit in here? I'll use another marker. Brown skin color. Body fat is also going to start coming down. So you can see that leptin as the hormone actually kind of follows what's happening with our body fat levels. Okay. So what are some of the normal ranges for leptin? Is this something that you can actually test yourself if you were interested in knowing where your leptin levels sit? So I'll write those on the board for you as well. So I'm going to give you two different ranges. One is for lean individuals, and then one is for individuals who are overweight or obese. So what you would expect to see normal leptin levels if you were to go and have your serum leptin tested by your doctor. So for lean individuals, we'll start with males. So we're looking at 0.3 to 13.4 nanograms per mil. And for females, we're looking at 4.7 to 23. So that's for somebody with a BMI between 18 to 25. So for overweight individuals, and we'll start with males, we're looking at 1.8. And for females, we're looking at 8.0 to 39, or 8 to 39, I should say rather. So you can see there's quite a bit of variance between somebody that is lean versus somebody that is overweight. And that brings me to my next point. So what happens if I have high leptin levels, or alternatively somebody perhaps that's lost a lot of body weight has really low leptin levels? So we'll start with this particular point here. And this is actually called, or a phenomenon known as, leptin resistance. Not to be confused with insulin resistance. There are a lot of terms that kind of use this resistance terminology, and it can be quite confusing. Leptin resistance can basically happen, and as we know, it's largely regulated or modulated by our fat cells. So Let's look at a day where we perhaps overconsume calories from food, or maybe over the course of a few days, you end up consuming an excessive amount of calories. So what then happens is that energy that we consume ends up being stored as triglycerides inside our fat cells, or our fat cells will start to increase in size, or over time, perhaps even number. When that happens, what we would then see is our leptin levels actually starting to increase, okay? Because we're trying to signal to our brain that we do not need to eat anymore. We're fed, okay? The more that leptin starts to increase, the more satiated that you should feel. But if our cells become too large, so our fat cells, if they become too large, we can develop what is called leptin resistance. Our brain no longer responds to the signal of the leptin that's being secreted by the fat tissue, and that becomes a problem. If you were to go and have your serum levels tested and you were somebody that is overweight, you might experience or receive a reading somewhere in this range. So if you're female, perhaps you're somewhere in the high 20s or low 30s, and if you're a male, maybe you're in the high teens. Okay, so that's not a normal response, because we're constantly bombarding, messages to the brain to stop eating, but it no longer responds the way that it should. It's dysregulated. It's damaged, if you want to think of it like that. How can we actually get our leptin levels back towards normal? Okay, this is obviously mostly a problem in people who have gained a lot of weight. And there are a couple of symptoms or telltale signs that perhaps your leptin levels are elevated, or you're not responding normally. So some of the key things to look out for are constant feelings of hunger. Perhaps you've just sat down to a really large meal, and within 1 hour of eating, where you should normally feel quite full and satiated, you're really hungry again. And the most obvious one is that you find it really difficult to lose weight, regardless of how low you end up taking your calories. And that would also be an indication that there is some kind of metabolic dysfunction or suppression happening at the same time. So they do work hand in hand with each other. So perhaps you're dieting on 1,200 or 1,000 calories and nothing's happening. You look at something across the room and you're gaining weight. So that would be some of the common symptoms that might indicate that you are leptin resistant, but not always the case. But if you were concerned, you could also go to your doctor and just order a simple serum leptin test to find out where you stand. Getting back to my point of how can we correct our leptin levels if they are elevated, the number one thing that you guys can do is to lose body fat. So the first thing that I would recommend is to make sure that you are doing plenty of exercise. So if you've been quite inactive, or you have a very inactive or sedentary job, get yourself to the gym, find something that you really enjoy, and expend calories, okay? It all comes down to calorie balance at the end of the day, so it's really important that you're expending more than you are taking in from food. As our body fat levels start to decrease, hopefully we can start to normalize that leptin response, because remember, leptin is largely regulated by our body fat. So as our fat levels come down, so too will our leptin, and hopefully that signaling to the brain will start to correct itself, and you're no longer going to have really low levels of ghrelin and high levels of leptin. The other thing is obviously monitoring your food consumption. I'm a big advocate of flexible dieting. So if you're somebody who hasn't tried flexible dieting before, start tracking your calories and be consistent with your calories. So if you're wondering where to start with that, a great place would be to check out our books. We have 2 books that will help you with this. One is called The Complete Contest Prep Guide, and the other is Fat Loss Forever. So if you would like to learn how to calculate correctly your calories and how to lose weight successfully, I would strongly recommend you go and check those out. And tracking your macros is the most accurate way, far more so than some of the other types of calorie restriction, where you're applying elimination of whole food groups or whole macronutrients, you know, reducing carbs, reducing fats, or just avoiding food groups altogether. So flexible dieting enables a much wider variety of foods to be consumed than other forms of dietary restriction. Those two things are really key. Energy balance through modifying your diet and modifying how much activity you're doing. If you need some extra assistance about what you could actually do to help reduce your total calorie intake, you can always leave a comment in the section below. I hope that's been useful for you. If you have any more questions about leptin, the hormone, or anything else to do with nutrition, feel free to comment, and thank you so much for watching.